and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. On the 5th of April, the Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning disclosed that the federal government was in the process of obtaining an $800 million loan, which it planned to distribute to 50 million Nigerians to cushion the effect of a planned removal of subsidies on petroleum. A few weeks later, after a separate meeting of the National Economic Council, a body which incorporates state government and other federal government agencies, it was decided that the removal of subsidy be suspended for now. In the minister's words, Council agreed that the timing of the removal of fuel subsidy should not be now, but that we should continue with all of the preparatory works that need to be done, and that this preparation has to be done in consultation with the states and other key stakeholders, including representatives of the incoming administration. Well, as we speak, a request for approval has now been made to the National Assembly seeking the approval of the $800 million loan, ostensibly as part of the preparatory work to remove subsidy. But should this be the priority of government at this time? For other loans that have been obtained by the federal government under this concession financing program, have we been able to make the most of it? On Hard Copy tonight, I have two people with me whose work has been to pore over the detail of government financing. Hamzat Lawal is the Chief Executive Officer of Connected Development and the founder of Follow the Money, a social accountability initiative, while Onigbinde is the co-founder and director at Budget, an organization has led the initiative of developing a public data visualization platform for Nigeria's budget. Gentlemen, welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so $800 million. I don't know when you heard about it, but when you heard about it, how did you receive it? Let me start with you, Hamzat.
Well, same way every other Nigeria received it. It was a shock. It was surprising that there was no much dialogue between civil society, government, and even other partners on specifically what this money was going to be achieved with. Yes, they said 50 million people, 10 million households. And, it created that very toxic environment in the digital and even mainstream media space. And that's why, as an organization, jointly, we reached out to the World Bank under the platform of Amplifying Partnership Voices, the PAVE platform, and had an engagement with the World Bank, just trying to understand what is this money going to be used for.
Both of you reached out to the World Bank. Both your organizations reached out to the interested. Okay. Yeah. So what did you find out? Maybe I should come to Shimon. Shimon, what did the World Bank tell you?
I mean, the World Bank was clear. About that. He had a duty to provide loans, and also had understanding that such money would be used as cash transfer for the poor. Let's not forget the World Bank, by its mission, it plans to end poverty. So that's just been in line with their own mission. It's now on the discretion of your government, of our government, to ask that, is this the right use of a loan? And I think they were very, very clear that they would do what they would have to do to give a loan to Nigerian government if they ask for it. The tenure on the conditions will be favorable and generous. But we have to ask our own government effectively that, do we need $800 million loan? And even if we need $800 million loan, is the right approach to use it for giving our money to the poor? Amzi was in that meeting. Maybe you could have more clarity about what went down.
And I like the fact that the World Bank was clear and they told us that this money, yes, is ready, and it has been approved by the board of the bank since 2001, but they were not going to disburse until the federal government gets approval from the National Assembly, which is stipulated by law. And now the president have, written to the National Assembly. But I also think that this is where it gets interesting, and I think the National Assembly must rise to the occasion. Because if they grant that approval today, the World Bank will disburse. And I think the National Assembly should use her powers and summon the minister and call for a public hearing. I think that this would also help ensure that all the gray areas are answered and Nigerians can understand specifically what this money would be used for. Yes, they say conditional cash transfer, but I always call it conditional cash payment. Because if we have only about 30 or 35% of our population in the banking system. And this could have provided an opportunity, the conditional cash transfer that the government, launched, could have provided an opportunity where we enroll people into financial institution or the financial system. And we can even take an example from East Africa, the M-Pesa, where that's the mobile money transfer. So we can help, close the leakages and all the gaps that, dwell into corruption. So again, the National Assembly has to call for a public hearing. I don't expect them to expeditiously approve this $800 million loan so that the federal government can go and collect. And also, if we're setting aside removal of fuel subsidy, why are we going ahead to collect this loan? Because we cannot, we cannot isolate fuel subsidy from this money. Because the first instance was they wanted to cushion the effect, because they were saying if we remove subsidy, there's going to be inflation and it's going to impact public means of transportation, and they wanted to support citizens to cushion the effect. So if you're not removing subsidy, then why are you taking this loan? Again, you cannot also isolate it from our forex regime, Today, we have different forex prices. So again, it must be holistic, beyond just running to collect $100 million. What exactly do we have to do as a people and as a government?
This is a big question. I don't know if it's something that's also bothered your mind as well. The fact that the subsidy removal was suspended, however, we're still going ahead to pursue the collection of the loan. Is this something that disturbed you, especially with the fact that this is an outgoing government? People are arguing that, well, government is a continuum. The incoming administration already said it's going to remove subsidy anyway. And maybe this is just groundwork till, the incoming administration comes in, and at least they'll know they have a loan somewhere that they can rely upon to cushion the effect of subsidy removal. Are you convinced by that argument?
Let's be honest with ourselves. It doesn't make any logical sense to take $800 million, because consumption doesn't at all. If you say you want to go and raise a bond, and you raise a domestic bond for such purpose, yeah, we can make an adjustment for it. You're borrowing in Naira, you're giving to people in Naira. We're going to go and borrow with $800 million FX, considering the devaluation risk for that kind of money, considering also the sovereign risk return that we are going to pile up on our foreign exchange, foreign debt. And to do what? Not for like another LNG plant, not for us to be able to fix our transmission of power, not because we want to improve generation or distribution infrastructure. We want to distribute money to people. So why are we borrowing money in dollars for that? This is the same government in the 8 years that printed or received around 22 or 23 trillion naira from the CBN. So what is 350 billion? Now, even if you say you need to help to give palliative to cushion effect, we already said we're removing subsidy. So definitely we're supposed to get gains for subsidy removal. We said we're going to be able to save 3 trillion naira before the rest of the year by removal of subsidy. So why don't we use the 3 trillion naira for palliative distribution? So it doesn't add up for me in any way. But most importantly is what Abzia said. The National Assembly has to step up and perform its oversight functions perfectly. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm looking at our total debt stock. I think it was in January that Patience Oniha said that debt stock rose to 44.06 trillion naira as at the end of September 2022. So quite significant debt.
Higher than that now, because you've now added the new securitization. And that takes us around 70 to 77 trillion naira now. And that's really something that we should be troubled about.
Well, for a number of people, you both of you seem to be arguing. I don't know, Hamzat, I think I need to hear you very clearly on that, on whether or not you think we need this $800 million loan. Do you think we need it?
Well, again, taking loan is not a bad thing. But what do we do with this loan? Mark, when people are poor, and I will not shy away from the fact that, because we can afford the basic, that means we should do away, we should be selfish about if we need to continue to support these people and bring them out of poverty. And we also need to be clear that in 2019, people that are middle class are now poor. Because when you look at the impact of COVID-19, when you look at the recession and even inflation that we're experiencing, over 100% in the market. So yes, we need to support poor people. But my own worry is, how do we go about it so that there are no leakages? I'm for fuel subsidy removal. And if I enforce fuel subsidy removal, it means that government needs to step out and support people that this subsidy removal would impact directly, which are the poorest of the poor.
So that's another question I intend to come to much later. But I'm asking you more pointedly, if you think that the obtaining of an $800 million loan would be the best use of that money.
Well, Mark, again, maybe, maybe not. I'm not in government, and my role
as a citizen.
But Mark, as a citizen, like it or not, if government want to take this loan, they'll take it. If the National Assembly approve this loan today, they will take the money.
You have asked for a public hearing.
Yes, I have asked for a public hearing. I hope that the National Assembly hosts a public hearing and brings civil society and the media to engage with the Minister of Finance, the Debt Management Office, the CBN governor, so we can have a robust conversation and educate the Nigerian people. Because
a number of people think that our refineries is where we have the problem. I mean, the fact that our refineries are not working. Yes, the Dangote, who's a private effort refinery, should be coming on stream very soon. We understand perhaps sometime this month it should be commissioned. While we're looking to that with hope, and the Port Harcourt refinery has been rehabilitated from what we understand. There's a lot of focus on, whether or not we could be using this money to make sure that there is production in-house in such a way that it brings down the cost of, because the reason why we're talking about subsidies is because we're importing in the first instance with scarce effects, which we barely have. So some people are saying, why don't we fix those things with the money rather than looking for how we will distribute this $800 million? Is it an argument that you're thinking about as well?
Yes, Mark, it's an argument I'm thinking about, but we have poor people. And as a government and as people, we must fend for these poor people. It is not their doing to remain or to be poor. So what happens to them? Do we say that we forget about them and fix our refineries and put other mechanisms in place as a people and as a government? So what happened to the poor people? So again, this we know would go a long way to ensure, one, people don't pay out of pocket for medical care. When they take their children to school, what happened to hidden fees? Because we always argue about free education, but is it really free? So again, Mark, yes, we can argue about refineries, but I think that one parting gift this government can give the incoming government is to take away fuel subsidy.
And leave them to manage the fallout?
Mark, in 2012, a lot of us were involved in the Occupy Nigeria movement.
Sean, is this something you agree with, that will be a good parting gift?
I mean, there are different layers for me personally. And I think the first layer is trust. You have to figure out a way to cement trust, because let's not lie to ourselves. There will be an inflationary element to removal of fuel subsidy. It might not be logical, it might be emotional, but there will be an inflationary consequence of that. So I don't want to be a burden. And I see you drive around with a 25-car convoy. I don't want to see you, have 80 special aids and you lavishing money like as if it's not going to run out of print. And you ask me to take an... And those were the ethical conversations we had in 2012. I want those ones to be ahead also. Because so that it just says, go take the body. The second thing for me is food inflation. If you're going to remove fuel subsidy, you have to find a clear means of tackling that. If people can eat, let's even set the baselines right, and they can eat at a decent fee, a decent amount, I think you can say, okay, then you can cushion that also with a solid public transport system. I think there will be a bit of balance in it for people. We can get to work and we can eat. But if food inflation is still rising significantly, and you also now have the fact that you're not able to use public transport system to cushion the effect, I think it's something. So it's not, I don't think fuel subsidy is just something to wake up in the morning and say we're removing fuel subsidy. And I think a lot of governments have tried to do it, but they worry about the social disorder or the social element of it, that this can lead to a significant bedlam and nobody wants to go there. But for me, the short elements of, there are also long-term thinking. Like identity systems. We're going to distribute $800 million to who? On what metric? To say who is the poorest? Those are the questions.
This is not the first time we've tried to distribute money. I mean, there have been many schemes of government to distribute social investment programs immediately come to mind. School feeding programs. These are all schemes that the federal government has conceived, and even the post-COVID program, NG Cares, I think, which has just been recently extended by the World Bank for another year. Yeah. I'm going to ask both of you when we come back from this break, whether looking at how government has expended those monies, it is going to be a worthwhile risk to let them, obtain another $800 million to distribute to the poor. When we come back from this break, please stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. Hamzat Lawal of Connected Development and Onigbinde of Budget are my guests tonight. And we're talking about the federal government's $800 million loan, which it wants to obtain from the World Bank and is now waiting for approval from the National Assembly. So, gentlemen, as we said, this is not the first time the federal government has received a loan to, cushion the effect of some impending or a disaster that has already happened. We saw what happened with COVID. Both of you collaborated on that particular scheme, looking at how the federal government, implemented the post-COVID, I think what's that now, palliative for COVID. Tell us, from what you saw, do you think that with what was put in place, we could actually say, federal government, yes, go ahead, we think that you can disburse this $800 million if this is what you want to do?
Mark, to be fair to government, first, when they started the conditional cash transfer, Connected Development supported government and build the grievance mechanism where beneficiaries can follow through a channel when they are grieved. I was in Anambra State, I was in Nasarawa State on ground, and we deployed people when they were disbursing this money. And also, during the homegrown school feeding program, I went to Kano, rural Kano, and I can say that, yes, this has helped increase enrollment in school and have ensured that we've reduced the numbers of out-of-school children at that time. Yes, I can also say that people benefited from the conditional cash transfer. But when you talk about COVID, government failed. Government failed because up till now, they cannot tell us what they did with the COVID money and who actually benefited from the COVID money. And that's why, for me, it's about closing these gaps and these leakages beyond collecting 800 million naira. Because it's only 800 million naira that we know about. There are other intervention and other loans that government would collect and have been collecting that it's not in the public domain. So for me, is how can we put in place mechanism that curbs corruption and those leakages, and this money would not go and find herself in personal pockets or pockets of cronies of people around.
You personalize the money, it's herself. I don't know why your money has to be a woman. Just wondering. Oh, well. So he said that when it comes to COVID, and I'm referring to the collaboration, I'm trying to remember the name now. CITAP, yes. What did you find with CITAP?
I think with CITAP, it starts from the fact that if your procurement systems are not effective, not properly structured, before an emergency situation, it does not get better. The potential that it could get worse. Because the speed at which you have to spend money means that you now have to jump over a lot of procedures. And that means even opens opportunities for corruption. And then what I'm saying that there needs to be a proper audit. A lot of money, in trillions of naira, from the federal government, also from the CBN, was spent as COVID-19 palliative through different fronts. And no one has been able to provide a proper audited statement. And that's something we don't do. Or even an evaluation of the process, even including the social safety net or the home school feeding, to read something or maybe of a proper detailed research about what exactly has been the importance or the transformative power of all these things that are happening. I really feel that we're not following process in all of these things. What should be ahead of us doing a palliative program or social program is an identity system. That's what we should have first figured out. A proper identity system that even forms the basis of creating a social contract. If you live outside the country and the government says, people of these areas, teachers of these areas, we want to give them $1,000, the government will send $1,000 directly to their account within the next 24 hours. But there's a proper social contract, profiling, to a certain degree. And those are the things we should aspire to. Not for us to walk into a community and pick 10 people and say, these are the poorest people, and put them in a register. And if somebody maybe went to farm or wasn't around or possibly went into extreme poverty because of some certain crop loss, such person doesn't make such a register. And those are the kind of things that we have not done. But whatever, so look at us, we spend at least the social intervention program has spent at least 1.5 trillion naira since we began. Now we still had 133 million people still in multidimensional poverty. So if you add it up, it just means that somehow the funding is not properly spent. It's not as targeted as it should be. And that was my question when I was talking about fuel subsidy removal. There's some things you need to do ahead, which is a proper identity system, which gives people, those who are most vulnerable, the poorest of the poorest people, the kind of benefit that they should get from such policy direction.
So somehow it would appear that we're putting the cart before the horse. That's from what I glean. We're putting the cart that even right now, even if the federal government were to get $800 million for a very altruistic purpose, if we were to look at it that way, we do not even have the data to be able to ensure that it is truly the people who are the most vulnerable that get, or let's say, the facilities to ensure that it is those people who actually get the monies, which is something to really worry about, because we do know that there are a number of social programs that are still ongoing. Just a few days ago, the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning spoke in Edo State, where he was talking about how this NG Cares program, I think what about $750 million, also being financed by the World Bank, has now been extended by 1 year. And of course, they had people to say, oh, look, these are the people who benefited from this. It was supposed to be a post-COVID program helping small and medium businesses. But then, questions will still arise as to whether, how many people know about these programs, how many people are able to access these programs. It seems that there is still a very big loophole. So how do you suggest that we can close these gaps, given your knowledge about, poor communities, the poor in general, and how government, agencies work?
Mark, we already even have a platform beyond the PAVE platform. There's the OGP platform, the Open Government Partnership platform, where, this platform brings together civil society, the media, and government. And it's being co-chaired by government and civil society. And it's just for us to have this robust conversation, and even for government to agree. And then we set a timeline. This is not rocket science, Mark. This is public money given to you based on public trust. So how we can do this is, one, our procurement process have to be very effective and efficient. And we must make data public to the Nigerian people. Today, most of government data are not public. And those that are even public are not machine readable. If you don't have organization like Budget or Code who always write FOIs to get some of this data, and it takes us a nightmare to make them machine readable and even simplify and even translate them to the Nigerian people so they're empowered to hold government to account. But I believe if there's a political will by government, because it must be driven by government. It can't be driven by civil society, because they have the mandate, they have the powers, the executive powers. It must be driven by government with a political will and a mandate, certain timelines that we have to do this. But they must work with civil society and the media so that the Nigerian people can trust them. Because what we lack here is that trust deficit. Because no matter how good a government policy is, if the Nigerian people do not buy into it, it would never be successful.
Oh, sure.
I mean, quickly looking at that, I'm just saying we have to have a collaborative conversation. Nobody's trying to fight government here. We just want things to work effectively. My thinking is, first, we need to anchor Nigeria on a social contract framework, which means that government knows its people and is able to support them when they have challenges. People also pay taxes and things like that will happen. And to be able to build a proper social contract, because that's what helps government to know who is poor, who is the poorest of the poorest, who is the most vulnerable to any kind of shock. When we had this last change of money, the poultry farmers were making eggs. They had a significant loss because they were not able to move. Now, is there any way the government could have been able to specifically target poultry farmers? And so this is the kind of reasoning we need in the system to know how to properly provide targeted intervention. And the only way we do that is to have data, to have proper citizen database, and being able to ensure that that database is anchored on people also paying taxes or being committed into some sort of way. And we can now say, okay, yes, We can be able to support you when you have challenges. And I think this ad hoc system of where we have a social register and we're now saying we're giving them, it's not going to be effective.
Hamzat wants the National Assembly to hold a public hearing before it grants approval. How are you also in support of that, or would you want them to throw this out completely?
Throw it out completely, wait to the next National Assembly, maybe the 11th National Assembly, let them come and look at it. That's why the timing is just not perfect. I'm for the next government to remove subsidy. So that, because if the social upheavals happen, you're able to own that challenge with your chest. So let the next National Assembly handle this. We're in the dying days of this administration. So, people should be wrapping up, not being able to, now not going and extending significantly certain lines. I don't think there's no rush. If we waited for all these years, there was a time oil prices were $30 per barrel. Civil society was 100% clear. Remove this subsidy so that the adjustment can be known to every Nigerian and focus on the things. But and at the end of the day, we came back and said, subsidies continue. We are saying they should remove it, but I'm saying there's some certain conditions because we have to put an human face to this. Yeah.
Hamzat, your last words.
Well, every day we continue to allow for subsidy. We're subsidizing the rich, not the poor. The poor are actually bearing the brunt. And we spend over 50 billion naira every day in subsidizing rich people who can actually afford it.
Well, it's certainly food for thought, and maybe something you would want to respond to. Gentlemen, I have to thank you for coming on Hard Copy tonight. And that's the program, and your feedback is welcome to the handle showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Onigbinde.